the war had already ended 3 times before he noticed. That was the problem with commanding eternal wars. Conclusions became repetitive, like hearing the same joke told by different dying civilizations. He sat astride his dragon as it hovered above the fractured remains of a planet that had once insisted it was unconquerable. The dragon exhaled a slow stream of fire, more out of habit than necessity, and glanced back at him with an expression that could only be described as bored disappointment. "You're doing it again," the dragon rumbled. "Doing what? Winning without enthusiasm." He considered that. "I thought efficiency was the goal." "It is," the dragon replied, snapping its jaws shut on a drifting piece of debris. "But a little flair wouldn't hurt. Maybe a speech. You used to enjoy speeches." "I ran out of new ones." "You could recycle them. No one survives long enough to notice." Before he could respond, something shifted, not in the battlefield, but in the way the battlefield existed. The stars above flickered, not like dying lights, but like thoughts being reconsidered. The man narrowed his eyes. He had seen weapons that distorted gravity, engines that consumed dimensions, and once, regrettably, a bureaucratic device that weaponized paperwork. This felt different. She stood where there had been nothing. Not arriving, not descending, simply present, as if reality had corrected itself around her. She looked human, almost insultingly so, except for the long, elegant ears that curved slightly backward, catching the non-existent wind. Her gaze moved across the ruins with mild curiosity, like someone inspecting a poorly organized room. "You're late," the dragon said. The man blinked. "We don't know who that is." "She's late anyway," the dragon insisted. The woman tilted her head. "Is this the part where you threaten me, or do we skip directly to disappointment?" "I don't threaten," the man said. "He definitely threatens," the dragon added. "He just does it in a very emotionally repressed way." She smiled faintly. "Charming, and here I thought eternal war would make you more creative." He studied her carefully. There was no fear in her posture, no tension in her voice. Even the battlefield seemed reluctant to disturb her, as if it wasn't sure it had permission. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Neither should you," she replied, stepping over a crack in space as if it were merely inconvenient flooring. "But here we are, making questionable decisions." The dragon leaned closer to him. "I like her, she insults you." "I've been insulted before. Not this elegantly." She stopped a short distance away, close enough that he could see the subtle glow in her eyes, like distant timelines reflecting off each other. "Tell me," she said, "do you ever get tired of winning the same war?" "It's not the same war." "It is," she said gently. "Different enemies, same ending. You arrive, you destroy, you leave. Very efficient, very dull." The dragon snorted. "I told you." He ignored it, and what would you suggest instead? She considered him for a moment, then shrugged. "Something less predictable, perhaps a war that doesn't end the way you expect." "I don't deal in uncertainty." "That's unfortunate," she said, her smile widening just slightly. "Because I do." For the first time in a very long time, he felt something unfamiliar pressing against the edges of his certainty. It wasn't fear. It was curiosity, sharp and unwelcome. The dragon shifted beneath him. "This is new," it murmured. "Yes," he said quietly, and for once the war did not immediately continue. She did not move like someone entering a battlefield. She moved like someone rearranging it. He watched her step forward, and the broken ground beneath her feet seemed to hesitate, as if unsure whether it should remain broken. His dragon shifted uneasily, claws scraping against fragments of reality that hadn't decided if they were solid. "I don't like this," the dragon muttered. "You don't like anything unfamiliar," he replied. "I like that one planet with the singing volcanoes. You tried to eat one." "It started it." The woman glanced back at them, faint amusement in her eyes. "You argue like you've had too much time together." "We've had exactly too much time together," the dragon said, "and not enough snacks." He ignored that and focused on her. "You said you deal in uncertainty. Explain." She tilted her head, as if deciding how much of reality he was ready to misunderstand. "You fight outcomes, I adjust beginnings." "That's the same thing." "It isn't," she said, stepping forward again. The air bent slightly around her, not visibly, but in a way that made his instincts uneasy. "You end wars. I decide which wars get to exist." The dragon blinked. "That sounds illegal." "Reality has very loose regulations," she replied. Before he could respond, she raised her hand, not dramatically, not with force, but with quiet intention. For a moment, nothing happened. Then something impossible occurred in a very casual way. a small creature appeared between them. It was a dragon, not like the one beneath him. This one was small, barely larger than his arm, with eyes too aware for something that had just begun existing. It blinked, stretched its wings, and immediately sneezed a tiny spark of fire. The dragon under him recoiled. "What is that?" "A dragon," she said. "I can see that," it snapped. "Why is it so compact?" "It's new," she replied. The small dragon looked around, then at him, then at the much larger dragon, and chirped as if greeting an extremely confusing relative. Then it grew. Not gradually, not naturally. It simply skipped. One moment it was small, the next it was twice the size. Then again. Within seconds, it hovered awkwardly in the air, wings beating as if it had always known how. The man stared, something rare crossing his expression. "That's not possible," he said. "Of course it is," she replied. "You're just used to slower versions of it." The larger dragon narrowed its eyes. "I don't like it. Because it's new. Because it didn't earn that size," it said. "I had to grow into mine. There were struggles, character development." The smaller dragon, now not so small, let out a proud, slightly off-key roar. "It hasn't even had time for a tragic backstory," the larger dragon added, clearly offended. She smiled faintly. "Time is flexible." As if to prove her point, the new dragon flickered, not vanishing but shifting. For a brief second, it seemed older, its wings broader, its presence heavier. Then it snapped back as if reality had corrected an over-enthusiastic guess. The man felt it then, not just power but distortion. Time wasn't flowing around the creature. It was listening to it. "What have you done?" he asked. "Started something," she said simply. The dragon beneath him leaned closer. "We are not adopting it." "No one said anything about adopting. It already looks like it wants to follow us. I can tell, it has that expression." The smaller dragon tilted its head and drifted slightly closer. "See?" The larger dragon hissed. "That's the expression." She stepped between them, calm as ever. "It's not yours, not yet." "Not yet," the man repeated. She met his gaze. "They grow fast, faster than wars, faster than decisions." As if on cue, the dragon flickered again, this time holding its larger form a fraction longer. Its eyes sharpened, its posture steadied. The battlefield around them shifted subtly, cracks in space aligning differently, as if something had nudged the structure of the moment. The man exhaled slowly. "You're changing the war." "I told you," she said softly. "I don't fight them, I change what they are." The larger dragon huffed. "I still don't like it." The smaller one let out another uneven roar, slightly louder this time. "But it does have potential," it admitted reluctantly. And for the first time, the man realized the war was no longer something he could simply win. The war did not escalate, it unraveled. At first, it was subtle. Enemy formations that had always arrived at precise intervals began to falter, appearing a second too late or not at all. Weapons fired before they were triggered. Entire fleets hesitated, as if unsure whether they had already been destroyed. The man stood still, watching patterns he had memorized across centuries collapse into uncertainty. "This is new," the dragon muttered. "I'm aware. I don't like new when it replaces winning. You complained about winning. I complain about many things. That doesn't mean I want them fixed." The younger dragon flickered again, now larger, its presence pressing strangely against the edges of everything. It moved with confidence that had not been earned through time, but taken from it. When it roared, the sound arrived before the motion, echoing backward in a way that made even the stars seem briefly confused. She stood between them and the shifting battlefield, calm as ever. "They've noticed." "Who?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked upward, toward something that wasn't visible but could be felt, a resistance, ancient and precise. Then the war answered for her. The enemies did not arrive as ships or armies this time. They appeared as absences, as spaces where events refused to happen, regions where cause and effect quietly disagreed. The man stepped forward instinctively, but for the first time, his certainty hesitated. "You can't fight that," the dragon said. "I can fight anything." "Yes, but this might involve thinking." He ignored that, but he did not move further. The younger dragon surged forward, wings cutting through moments instead of air. It collided with one of the empty spaces, and for a brief instant, something impossible occurred, the absence shattered. Time snapped back into place with a sharp, almost offended force. The dragon blinked. "Did it just fix nothing?" "It forced it to exist," she said. More of the dragons emerged around them, not born in the usual sense, but arriving as if they had always been meant to. Each one carried that same distortion, that same refusal to obey the normal order of things. They moved together not as a swarm but as a correction. The man watched them, something shifting in him, not confusion, not resistance, but understanding. "I've been ending wars," he said slowly. "Yes," she replied, but they never ended. "No," he exhaled, the weight of countless victories settling into something quieter. "Because I never changed anything. I just repeated it." The dragon beneath him shifted. "Are we having a realization? Because I prefer those with less existential dread." He almost smiled. "We're changing strategy. I like the old strategy. It involved less thinking." He stepped forward, not with force but with intention. The dragons moved with him, their presence bending the battlefield into something unstable but alive. "Then we do it differently," he said. The enemy pressed harder, the empty spaces expanding, trying to erase what refused to follow their order. But the dragons met them, not with destruction, but with interference. They forced moments to exist, forced outcomes to shift, unraveling the control that had kept the war endless. The larger dragon roared, louder this time, almost proud. "I take back some of what I said. This is interesting." "High praise," the man said. Beside him she watched, her expression softer now. "You see it." "Yes," he said. Winning was never the point. "And now," he glanced at her, then at the dragons, reshaping everything around them. "Now we decide what comes after." The final resistance broke not with an explosion, but with a quiet collapse, as if something had finally accepted it no longer belonged. The battlefield stilled. For the first time, there was no immediate next war. The dragons settled, their forms stabilizing, no longer flickering with uncontrolled shifts. The younger one landed nearby, looking at him with something almost like expectation. The larger dragon huffed. "Don't get attached." "I already am," he admitted. She stepped closer, her presence no longer a disruption, but something woven into the moment. "So," she said lightly, "no more endless wars." He looked at the quiet horizon, then back at her. "No, something else." The dragon groaned. "Please tell me it still involves dramatic entrances." He smirked faintly. "We'll keep those." "That's all I ask." The silence that followed was not empty. It was open, waiting, not for conflict, but for choice. And this time he did not rush to fill it. Time had grown lazy around them, stretching like taffy, folding over itself in gentle loops rather than snapping in sharp, violent lines. The dragons moved through it with casual grace, wings slicing through seconds as if they were nothing more than mist. The man stood atop a plateau of fractured crystal, his dragon beneath him humming softly as though it, too, appreciated the novelty of quiet. He looked at the woman beside him, the long ears brushing faintly against the glow of a shifting sun, and realized that nothing he had done before had prepared him for this. Not for patience, not for wonder, not for the sheer absurdity of bending reality into something cooperative instead of destructive. The smaller dragons, now fully grown but still mischievous, darted through loops of time, occasionally colliding with their own past selves and emitting a delighted screech. One of them zipped past the man, flicking a temporal tail that unspooled the moment he had stubbed his toe a century ago. He grumbled but caught himself smiling. Even centuries of war had never produced this kind of chaos. Chaotic, yes, but joyful, alive, with possibilities. The woman waved a hand, and a field of shimmering light expanded outward, folding broken fragments of planets, shattered fleets, and errant timelines into a new, coherent form. "It's not perfect," she said, "but it's ours for now." The man nodded, letting the enormity of the statement sink in. He had spent lifetimes believing that war defined purpose, that destruction was the measure of his skill. And yet here, watching dragons bend time not to conquer, but to play, he realized that creation could be far more demanding and far more rewarding. "I suppose winning isn't everything," he admitted. The larger dragon snorted. "Finally, about time you learned something. I was beginning to worry you. Do you never appreciate the finer arts of temporal mischief?" "I'm learning," he said, brushing a hand along the dragon's scaled neck. "It's different, better." "Different is good," she said, her voice playful but steady. "Better is necessary." She gestured, and a cluster of small, spinning portals appeared, each containing a potential world. Some were still unstable, others stubbornly frozen in half-formed time loops. The dragons swooped between them, nudging each possibility into balance with gentle insistence. He laughed, a sound rare for him in centuries of endless fighting. This is absurd, and yet somehow perfect. She grinned. Absurdity is underappreciated, and we clearly have the market cornered. The dragons tilted their heads at the humor, as if sensing the nuance, but enjoying it more than they would any battle cry. Even the largest, most serious one emitted a low, rumbling chuckle. He turned fully to the woman, seeing not a mystery, not a disruptor, but a partner. She had challenged his certainties, taught him patience, and shown him that power was not just about force, but about shaping possibility. "I think I've finally learned what it means to command," he said. "And to let go," she added. "Yes," he admitted, smiling, "and maybe to laugh in the middle of it." The sunlight fractured through the crystal plateau, bending into rainbow arcs as the dragons soared above, weaving new destinies through loops of time. The battles that had once defined him now seemed like echoes, faint and distant, replaced by the deliberate creation of something enduring. "Shall we see what comes next?" she asked. He nodded, glancing at the dragons that had grown beyond his comprehension, and then back at her, the faintest grin on his face. "We already are." And together, they stepped into a future they were no longer bound to win, but to build, one impossible, exhilarating, joyful moment at a time. The endless wars were over. Their love, their dragons, and their audacious humor had rewritten reality itself. And for the first time, he felt complete.